Hey guys, this is Awesome Coder. So in this video we're going to create the Pong game using Scratch 3. Now let me show you the finished version of the game. As you can see, we can control the paddles. The ball is bouncing off the paddles and the top and bottom edges of the stage. Different sounds are playing on different occasions. The opponent paddle's score increases when a paddle misses a ball. So this is going to be a fun project to start with. So yeah, let's start building the game. Now in my Scratch editor, first I'll delete the default cat sprite, because we won't be needing it. So I'll click this delete icon here. Now let's change the background or backdrop of our stage. I'll choose paint, indicated by paintbrush from the backdrop options. Now here on the canvas, let's zoom out a little. Choose rectangle tool from the toolbar. Make sure the outline is set to none. Now let's draw our rectangle on the whole canvas by simply holding the left click and dragging the mouse. So I'll roughly make the rectangle as large as our canvas. Okay, as you saw in the finished game that our background color was dark gray, so click on the fill color and pick a dark grayish color by adjusting the sliders. Okay, I like this color. Now let's switch back to the code area by clicking on the code tab. Now let's add our paddle sprite. I'll simply click on the choose a sprite option here. Search a sprite named paddle. Let's select it. Now our paddle is positioned on the stage. Okay, so now let's rotate this paddle sprite so that it looks like the paddle you saw in the finished version of the game. So here I'll set the direction to 0 degrees, which is by default set to 90 degrees. 0 degrees means that the sprite will be facing upwards, which is what we want here. Okay, now I want to customize our paddle sprite. So I'll switch to the Costumes tab. Now I want to change the color of the paddle sprite, so to do just that let's select the Paint Bucket tool from Toolbar. Now I'll pick the white fill color by adjusting the sliders. And then just click on the part that we want to color white, make sure the Paint Bucket tool is selected. Now choose the black fill color and color the line at the center of the paddle by simply clicking it. Okay, so now our paddle looks like the one you saw in the finished product. Next, let's position our paddle at the left side of the stage. So here I'll set the X value to -220 and Y value to 0. Okay, now if you don't know what X and Y values are for, then I must explain to you before moving on. So the X and Y are known as the coordinates of the sprite. They represent the exact location where the sprite will be positioned on the stage. X coordinate represents the horizontal axis or the left and right, likewise Y coordinate represents the vertical axis or the top and bottom of the stage. Now I'll change the name of the sprite. Here in the sprite name field I'll type left paddle. Okay, now we're ready to write some code for our paddle. We want the paddle to move up and down when the W and S keys are pressed. So first drag the when green flag clicked block from the events category on the code area. Next I'll place the forever block from the control category. Inside the forever block I'll put if then block. From the sensing category drag the key pressed block. And let's choose the W key from the drop-down menu. So now when the W key is pressed we want the paddle to move up, right, so to move our paddle upwards we'll have to change the paddle sprite's Y value. Okay, so select the motion category here and drag the change Y by block to the code area. Make sure you don't accidentally select the wrong block. So the positive Y value is up, so we'll change Y by a +10. Now let's duplicate this if block by right-clicking on the if block and selecting duplicate. Let's place it at the bottom of the first if block. Now here change the W key to S and change the +10 to -10. Now let's test our game by clicking the green flag button. Let me maximize the window. Okay, so now I can move the paddle in up and down directions by pressing the W and S keys on my keyboard. But as you can see, there is slight problem here. I can actually move the paddle outside of the stage. Of course we don't want that. It's actually very easy to solve this problem. We only need to add one block for that. Okay, so from motion category let's scroll down and find this, if on edge, bounce block, and add as the very last block inside the forever loop block. Now let's test our game. And no matter how hard I try, the paddle can never move outside the visible bounds of the stage. Now let's create the second paddle. So I'll right-click on the left paddle sprite and select Duplicate. Let's rename it to the right paddle. I'll position it to the right side of the stage, so I'll set the X field's value to positive 220. Now we need to make some minor changes inside the right paddle sprite script, so make sure that the right paddle is selected in the sprites list. Here in if block, instead of the W key we want the up arrow key, likewise change the S to down arrow key, and everything else can remain the same. Now let's test our game. I can move the left paddle with W and S keys, and right paddle can be moved with the up and down arrow keys. Now I'll create the ball sprite. So in Choose a Sprite options I'll select Paint option indicated by the paintbrush icon. Let's zoom in a little. Select the circle tool from the toolbar. Make sure the outline is set to none. Now hold the Shift key and press the left click and then drag the mouse to draw a perfect circle. Okay, I like this size for the ball. You can make the ball big or small according to your taste. Now select the Move tool. Grab the circle with the Move tool and make sure it's centered by placing it at the center of the crosshair. Now I'll change the fill color to white. Let's set the position of the ball sprite to 0 on the x-axis and 0 on the y-axis in order to center it on the stage. And also rename the sprite to ball. Now let's write code for the ball. Make sure the ball sprite is selected in the sprites list. So as always I'll drag the when green flag clicked block from the events category. Next drag the forever loop block. So we want the ball to start moving at an angle. So for that we'll have to change both x and y of the ball by some number, each iteration of the forever loop. So from the motion category drag the change x by block and put it inside the forever loop block. Next we'll do same for the y. So drag in the change y by block. For now let's change the x by a positive 8 and y by 4. These are just the numbers I came up with. You are welcome to try out your own. Now let's click the green flag and as you can see the ball starts moving in the top right direction. For now just ignore this sliding of the ball when it hits the edge of the stage, we'll fix that later. Now let me show you something. Here I'll click the green flag to again run the game. As you can see our ball is nowhere to be seen. That's because we haven't reset the ball's position back to the center. That's why the position from the previous run of the game is used. So we have to reset the position every time the green flag is clicked. So from the motion category drag the Go to XY block and make sure to put it above the forever loop, not inside it. If you put this block inside the forever loop, the game is not going to work correctly. Set x to 0 and y to 0, so that our ball always starts from the center of the stage. Now let's run the game. As you can see, the ball always starts from the center. And I can test this by running the game again and again. Now our ball's position is always going to change by these hard-coded numbers 8 and 4, and the effect of that is that the ball is always going to move in the same direction. But we want our ball's direction to change whenever it hits the walls or the paddles. For that we have to create two new variables. A variable is simply a container that can be used to store a value in it, like numbers or strings. So here I'll select the variables category. Here you can see by default a variable is created for us. We don't want that, so I'll remove it by right-clicking on the variable's name and selecting the delete option. I'll make a new variable. Make sure, for this sprite only, option is selected. I'll name the variable velocity x. You can also name it speed x. I'll uncheck this variable so that the value is not shown on the stage. Next, let's create the velocity y variable. Again, make sure, for this sprite only, is selected. And also uncheck this variable. Now at the very start of our game we'll set the x velocity's value to 8. And y velocity's value to 4. Now here, instead of the hard-coded values, we can pass in the variable's values. Let's run the game and everything works same as before, but now we have variables, and with the help of these variables we'll be able to change the direction of our ball on specific occasions in the game. Now we're going to code the collision detection between the ball and the paddles, so that when the ball hits any paddle it will bounce and move in the other direction. So first I'll drag the if block. Now we need to know when the ball touches the left or right paddle. Drag the or block from the operators. From sensing, drag touching mouse pointer block. Here, instead of mouse pointer, I'll select the left paddle from the drop-down. Duplicate this. And select right paddle. Drag the block and put it in the if check. Now the code inside this block is going to run whenever the ball touches the left or right paddle. Now when that happens we need to reverse the ball's x direction, which in our case is velocity x. So first drag in the set velocity x block from the variables. Now for reversing some number we can use a simple math formula here. We can actually multiply the number, which in this case is our ball's velocity x, with the -1. Which will have the effect that when the velocity x is negative it will convert it into the positive and vice versa. So from operators, drag in the multiplication operation. Now pass in the value of velocity x. And multiply it with -1. And set the value of velocity x to this operation's result. Now run the game. As you can see, the ball is colliding with the paddles and bounces back and forth between the paddles. Now here we need the ball to also collide with the top and the bottom boundaries. Drag in the if block. And put it under the first if block. Please make sure not to put it inside the first if block. From operators, bring in the greater than operation. From motion, bring in the Y position. Put it in the if check. Now we'll say if the Y position is greater than 173. So why I am passing in the 173? Let me show you why. I'll manually change the Y position of the ball to 173. As you can see, at 173 the ball just hits the top edge of the stage. So we're saying here that when the ball hits the top edge, do something inside this if block. So here we'll set the velocity y to -4, so it will make the ball move in the bottom direction. Let's duplicate this if block. Here we'll need to check if the y position is less than -173. So bring in the less than operation. Put in the y position. And put in -173. Put the whole operation in the if check. Here we're checking the collision with the bottom edge. So when the ball hits the bottom edge, we change the velocity y's value to +4, so that it moves in the up direction. Now let's click the green flag. And voila! The ball is colliding with the top and bottom edges. Now let's implement the scoring mechanics. But first we need to make the ball's position reset back to the center of the stage whenever the ball is touching either the left or the right edge. Bring in the if block. Drag in the greater than operation. Bring in the X position from the motion. Now if I change the ball's X position manually to 233, you can see the ball is touching the right edge. Here we'll say if the X position is greater than 233. Go to center of the stage. Remember the center is at position 0, 0. So from the motion we'll drag in, go to block. And we'll say go to 0 on the x-axis and 0 on the y-axis. Duplicate this for the left edge. Here replace the greater than operation with the less than operation. And say if the X position is less than -233. Then also go to the center. Click the green flag. And the ball will reset whenever it touches left or the right edge. Now to keep track of the score for both paddles, we must create two new variables. Click the Make a Variable button. We can leave the For All Sprites selected. Name the variable left. Do the same and name the variable right. Make sure the checkbox next to both variables' names is checked so that they display on the stage. Place the labels like this. Now let's implement the score increasing mechanism, so that whenever a paddle misses the ball, other paddle's score is increased by 1. Select the left paddle from the sprites list. And set left to 0. Recall that left and right are variables that keep track for the left and the right paddle respectively. Similarly do for the right paddle. Here instead of left, select right from the drop-down. Now select the ball from the sprites list. Here when the ball touches the right edge, change the left paddle's score by 1. Similarly do for the right paddle's score. Play the game. And we can see that right paddle's score increases whenever the left paddle misses the ball. Same applies to the other paddle. But here notice a little problem, that whenever a paddle misses the ball and the ball's position is reset back to the center, the ball instantly starts to move. We don't want that, we want the ball to wait for a second and then start moving. So from Control drag in the very first block from the list. And put it inside both if blocks. Play the game. Now the ball resets and waits for 1 second and then starts moving again. One thing we must fix is that when a paddle misses the ball and the ball resets, and then starts moving, the ball should actually move in the scoring paddle's direction, so that the paddle that missed the ball has an advantage over the paddle that scored a point. So when the right paddle misses the ball, set velocity x to -8 so that after reset the ball starts moving in the scoring paddle's direction, which in this case is left direction. Do the same for other if check. Here instead of -8, pass in 8. Run the game. And now it's working correctly. As you can see, whenever a paddle misses the ball starts moving in the scoring paddle's direction after its position resets. Now as the finishing touches, we'll add sound effects in our game. So select Sounds tab. Click on Choose a Sound. Search coin. Let me play the sound effect. We want to play this sound effect whenever a paddle scores a point. Get back to the code area. From Sounds, bring in the Start Sound block. Here from the drop-down, coin sound is already selected. Add this block inside both if blocks. Run the game. And as you can see that the coin sound starts playing when a paddle scores a point. Now when the ball touches any of the paddle, we should play a sound effect. So again from the Sounds, click on Choose a Sound. In the search bar type tennis, and you should see this tennis hit sound effect. Click on it. Let me play the sound for you. Back to the code area. Drag in the tennis hit sound effect and put it here. Play the game. And whenever the ball is touching a paddle, the sound effect is playing. Now we'll add the sound for the ball when it touches the top or the bottom edge. For that I'm going to use this pop sound, which is already added for me. If in your case it isn't added, you can add it by choosing it from the sounds library, as we have already done with the previous two. Let me play the sound. Get back to the code area. Drag in the Start Sound block. Put it inside the top edge if check. From the drop-down, select Pop. Repeat the same process for the bottom edge if check. And play the game for the very last time. And everything is working as expected. The sound effects are playing. So congratulations. If you have followed the video till the very end. This is by no means a complete game. But hey, at least it is better than nothing. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to see more videos like this one, please don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video. Until next time.